Oh, Caroline, I have to tell you. So today I finally lit the candle that you got me for my birthday, the one from Candles of Tomorrow, the Maelstrom one.
You lit it?
I did. It was too stressful. So I turned over to my Zen fountain and I lit that thing. And it was heaven. It's easily like one of the best candles that I have ever gotten.
I love a Disney candle, but these have the little wax shapes on top that go with whatever
this
attraction.
one has the wax Viking boat, and it's the coolest thing ever.
But my favorite part when I packaged it to send to you for your birthday was the label. The label made me laugh out loud.
So if you are looking for a new candle for your home, we at Poor Unfortunate Podcast highly recommend that you check out Candles of Tomorrow at candlesoftomorrow.com, or
my favorite way, looking on Instagram, and they are just at Candles of Tomorrow, and you can see all of the products that they sell on their Instagram, and there's a link right in their Instagram page right to the website if you want to order. They are the best.
They're the best.
Candles of Tomorrow. We love you.
Buy their stuff. So in terms of like backgroundy fun facts and things like that, I opted not to do any of them because I was like, Caroline's just going to cut them all anyway. So I'm like, I'm not going to put in the work.
No.
So when you cut all of my fun facts all of the time. No. I'm like, fun fact. And you're like, oh, that's something we can cut.
No. The people can't sit there for 2 hours. They can't.
They could.
But on the whole, I've been a saint to those poor unfortunate souls.
Hello, and welcome to Poor Unfortunate Podcast. My name is Conor Perkins.
And I am Caroline Ameti.
Hello.
Hello.
What's shaking?
Well, you know, I'm at mine and Connor's apartment in New York City and found mice, so it's been a good day.
It's been the best
Literally,
day.
my boyfriend was like, Connor knows that I don't like any kind of small creatures whatsoever. And so my boyfriend was just like, just call him Mickey Mouse and you'll feel better. And it's not helping.
Yeah, no, because Mickey does not look like a mouse. He looks like he's a different thing.
Oh, God.
Like a Mickey Mouse versus like a regular, live mouse. They're two different things.
Yeah. Sorry, Mickey.
What's new in terms of Disney? I feel like not a lot has happened over the past 2 weeks.
No, not a lot has happened at all, to be honest with you.
I think there is something that I want to talk to. If there are any Disney cast members right now who are listening, I know that a lot of Disney cast members have just had their furloughs extended indefinitely.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to say, as someone who has also been on furlough, keep hanging in there. I know it's hard. We see you. We recognize you. We recognize you for the work that you have done and the work that you so desperately want to do. And yeah, that I'm sorry that that's happening to you. Mm-hmm. And it's rough. And yeah, we see you.
Oh, speaking of that, Actors Equity Association and Disney were able to work out an agreement so that equity actors can go back to work in the Disney parks, which is good news. It took way too long, but it happened.
Yeah, way too long. I think that those are, I guess that's like our Disney updates.
Yeah. Which is fine with me because usually the one who gets a little bit stressed about our episodes is Conor. Today it's me.
Yeah, I'm more stressed.
Because we've just got such a hefty, deep topic for you today that I'm stressed. I hope that we get it all in there.
There's a lot of layers to this particular topic because, I mean, we might as well just say it. For this episode, it's our Showdown episode. And we are theming this episode attractions to film, Pirates of the Caribbean versus the Haunted Mansion. So, yeah, there's a lot of layers because we're going to be talking about the rides themselves, and there's two of them, and then we're going to be talking about movies themselves. I guess we're just going to jump right in.
Oh, yeah, I'm terrified. Let's do this.
We're going to start by talking about the attractions themselves. And so we're going to give you a little bit of background on the attractions, and then we'll do background on the movies, and then we will discuss everything at length.
Yes,
so
indeed.
If you haven't ridden any of these rides or you haven't watched either of these movies, the movies are both available on Disney+. The rides, you can ride them on YouTube if you want to. But definitely, this is your time now. If you haven't done any of the homework.
I need the homework.
You can go ahead and do that now, and we'll pause. Okay, thank you for doing your work. Good to see you again. Hear you. Whatever. I don't know. Let's start with Haunted Mansion. I think you need to just get some of your research out there so that you can start feeling better about this.
Okay, great.
So start with Haunted Mansion the ride. Give me some history. HISTREE.
History. Alrighty. So the Haunted Mansion, I just want to start this off by saying that you could write a book on the history of this ride. This ride went through so many different imaginings before it landed on the version that we know and love. So I'm going to try to give you the best idea I can. It's a complicated history. So let's go. So there are 3 different Haunted Mansions in Disney parks right now. In Disneyland in New Orleans Square, that one opened in 1969. Disney World is in Liberty Square, and that opened in 1971. And Tokyo Disneyland, the Haunted Mansion, is in Fantasyland, and that opened in 1983. There are, of course, other attractions in Disney parks that are inspired by the Haunted Mansion, but they are not using the exact model that began in Disneyland. So we've got the Phantom Manor in Disneyland.
Paris.
That one is in Frontierland and follows more of a specific story about a bride. It's kind of Western themed. And we've got Mystic Manor in Hong Kong Disneyland and Mystic Point. I missed one.
So good.
Definitely go look this up on YouTube. It's fascinating. It's a fully different story. It's really not related at all. It's a trackless ride. Very cool. Definitely go check it out. All right. So, wow. Haunted Mansion. So, ever since the idea of Disneyland was in Walt's mind, there was always going to be something that was Haunted Mansion-esque. So this idea has been around since the 50s when Disneyland was getting planned, and the original idea was going to be called Old House on the Hill. And so that would have been, there's not a lot of specifics about what the attraction inside would have been, but the idea was that it was going to be a dilapidated looking house off of Main Street with a church, a graveyard, and the manor itself perched on a hill.
Whoa.
Once that idea didn't really stick around because then Walt had Harper Goff draw an original sketch of what the mansion could be. So that's when we started moving into actual reality of this is going to be an attraction. And then in 1957, Walt assigned Ken Anderson the job of actually mocking up ideas for the ride and the area that would be surrounding it. So Ken Anderson chose the Shipley Lydecker Mansion in Baltimore and the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California as his inspiration for what they decided would be a Haunted Mansion in New Orleans Square. Now, Disneyland opened in 1955, but the Haunted Mansion didn't open for another 14 years after that. And that's partially because New Orleans Square was not even part of Disneyland on opening day. It was part of the first expansion in 1966. And even after that, the Haunted Mansion still didn't arrive for another 3 years after New Orleans Square opened, despite the fact that Disney first started telling people there was going to be a Haunted Mansion in 1961. So this was always the idea. There was always going to be a Haunted Mansion, but boy, did people have differing ideas about what it was going to be like. Oh my goodness. So here are a couple of the original backstories this is the part that I loved the most. I'm obsessed with like what the backstory of the Haunted Mansion is. So here were some of the possibilities that they ran through. The original one was going to be that we were going to learn about this bride, this blushing bride named Priscilla. Then, right before her wedding, she looks through the attic of her fiancé's mansion and discovers that he was a murderous pirate named Captain Gore. But he doesn't want anybody to know about his murderous past, so he throws her out the window and kills her. And she haunts him until he can't take it and he hangs himself. And their passion in life and in the afterlife is what attracts other spirits to the mansion.
Ooh.
Now, there's touches of that in the ride that we know today.
Yeah.
We've got a hanging.
I'm glad that Captain Gore got dropped. It's an awful name.
It's a little on the nose. So then the idea that came right after this one, I love this one. I love this one so much that this was in my stress dream about this episode last night.
We love stress dreams. We love them.
The mansion was going to be called Bloodmere Manor. And it was going to be on rundown and abandoned land owned by a former pirate.
Wait, hold on. And Bloodmere?
Bloodmere. Mm-hmm.
M-E-R-E at the end?
Indeed.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's dark.
I know. That's what I'm saying. And it was going to be like, the land around it was going to be super dilapidated. And the story was going to be that no one wanted to buy the land because, they knew that a pirate had lived there and they knew it had bad vibes. Disney was going to go so far as to make up a whole story about them taking a real mansion from Louisiana and moving it into the parks. Obviously, this is all completely made up. But they were making up this whole story where they were going to make up phantom injuries that the contractors would get, quote unquote, while moving the house from New Orleans into Disneyland.
I love that. You can't do that anymore, though. Like,
no,
you can't do that. But, I love that shit.
I respect it. It's a lot, though. It's a lot. Because they were going to finish it off with a story that one of the workers ended up getting walled into the building.
No.
Which is so scary. I kind of love it.
No, but yes. Absolutely yes.
Yeah. But this idea... So this idea was ditched not because it was absolutely horrifying and disturbing, but because I think it was Walt mostly, but everyone kind of agreed that they didn't want the look of the place to be completely dilapidated because then it would just become an eyesore in what was a beautiful park, and it was going to mess with the vibe.
Yeah.
This I didn't know either. They considered it being a retelling of the legend of Sleepy Hollow,
where the guests would relive the story one.
From the point of view of the Headless Horseman and Ichabod Crane. But they scrapped that because they were like, that requires too much backstory. Kids are going to get bored.
But also, we should definitely have a, dueling roller coaster sort of situation of Ichabod's ride.
I don't want a roller coaster, but I will take a dark ride.
Well, no. It'll be kind of like rock and roller, like a tamer rock and roller coaster, like an indoor, black light kind of situation.
Oh God, why?
Okay. We can discuss. We can figure this out. But
no, I think it should just be Horseman's Hollow, you big baby.
I will not go in there. You can't make me. I'm not doing it.
So then if you won't go to Horseman's Hollow, FYI everybody, me and Conor go to Sleepy Hollow every year for fall activities. And they have Horseman's Hollow where you can walk through and get the pants scared off of you by the Headless Horseman. And Conor refuses to go.
I do not like people bearing witness to my fear.
So then you would have hated the fact that at one point the mansion was going to be a walking tour led by the servants. I do not think that you would have vibed with that.
No, I mean, it depends on how
scary.
It depends on how scary it would be.
All right.
I mean, I remember with the Haunted Mansion, the first time I went to Disney World, I would not go on it because I was scared.
All right.
Even after people were like, Conor, you can go on. I was like, no. And then it was only the next time that I was like, okay, I want to go on. Because they were like, there's a room and the room shrinks. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get shrunk into a box and I won't be able to get out and I'm going to throw up. I don't know. I'm going to have to go to the bathroom and I won't be able to go to the bathroom. My mind spun into some sort of crazy anxiety disorder. But what the reality of it was my grandmother only half paying attention, and she was like, the room shrinks. And I got there and I was like, the room doesn't shrink, it stretches.
It expands.
I'm like, if anything, this is kind of freeing. I'm like, oh, space.
Space.
Sorry.
Yeah, so it was going to be a walking tour. At one point, Walt was going to voice the ghost host. We just went through a lot of ideas. And so the real turning point was in 1964. So Imagineers started to build the exterior of the mansion in Disneyland in 1963, while they still had not decided what was going to be going on inside as the actual attraction.
I love
that. They were like, let's build the exterior.
I love that. Such confidence.
Yeah.
I'm here for that.
Yes, you gotta love that. But then a bunch of the Imagineers, the best ones, got pulled away to work on stuff for the 1964 World's Fair. So that slowed things down.
That was Carousel Progress.
Mm-hmm. But it also ended up moving the Haunted Mansion along because the 1964 World's Fair is what led to the Omnimover, which is the vehicle that they use in the Haunted Mansion, which in the Haunted Mansion we call them Doom Buggies. But then finally the idea of that kind of vehicle is what finally moved the idea of the attraction away from a walkthrough. And then Walt Disney passed away in 1966, leaving no clear voice for what was wanted out of the Haunted Mansion. But before they had been playing, before Walt had passed away, Walt had put Raleigh Crump and Yale Gracie,
Yale Gracie,
who you will notice in the Haunted Mansion.
Yale Gracie did shit for pirates too.
Oh yes, you love. And so they were in charge of the visuals. And so one of Raleigh's ideas was there was going to be something called the Museum of the Weird that was inspired by a lot of the designs he had come up with for the attraction. So there were like talking chairs, coffin clocks, like ghostly apparitions and things like that. And that was going to be a separate attraction right next to the Haunted Mansion. But this was abandoned after Walt passed away. But we do have Raleigh Crump to thank for the character design and all the illusions, like the Hatbox Ghost and Madame Leota's cart and all of those great things. But then the main designers of the ride were Mark Davis and Claude Coates. Claude wanted the Haunted Mansion to be scary, and Mark wanted it to be full of gags and characters. And Snow White and Her Adventures had opened when Disneyland opened and was deemed way too scary by a lot of people. And so it seemed like a fully scary attraction wasn't going to be possible. You're welcome, Conor, because now you can go on.
Shut up.
But yes, but as I said, the Omnimover from the Ford Magic Skyway at the fair is what solved the problem because it honored Walt's desire for a walkthrough because it goes slowly and, it's kind of like you're walking through the hallways, but it controls the crowd flow and the perspective that the guests were seeing with the swivel effect.
Yeah.
So this totally opened up the possibilities of what they could do inside the mansion because they could control what you were going to see. And that's when they implemented the 3-act structure of the story and the ride as we know it was born. And Ex Atencio, he is the one who's responsible for really bringing the scary and the silly together. He also wrote the lyrics to Grim Grinning Ghosts with the music by Buddy Baker. And the ride was narrated by Paul Frees. And we were up and running with the story of the ride and the feel of the ride as we know it today. So there are a couple of fun updates on the ride since then. But I guess I'll tell you first, if you've never been on it, here's literally the quickest rundown of the Haunted Mansion because it really defies description. It is the perfect combination of silly and scary. It's a masterpiece. But basically, you walk into the foyer. The ghost host, who you can't see, introduces himself to you, says he's going to take you on a tour of the Haunted Mansion. And then you notice that the room that you were standing in is expanding and stretching, and so are all of the creepy, strange portraits in the room. But then the ghost host ask you to find a way out of the room, which you realize has no windows and no doors. And he says, of course, there's always my way. The lights go off, there's screams and thunder, and you look up and there is a corpse hanging above you, you guys.
You are very into this.
I love this.
This is a whole body event for you.
Oh my gosh.
None of you are seeing this, but this is you have to watch her just deliver this.
You know that I really like dark stuff. So when I was a kid, my favorite part of the whole thing, I was such a twisted child. I was always most excited to look up and see the corpse hanging from the ceiling. That was my favorite part by far. I wanted the whole thing to be like that, but okay.
Just corpses.
So you are released, you pass through the portrait gallery, and you're loaded into your doom buggy, and you go through the mansion. You see things like an endless hallway, the corridor of doors, the seance room, a grand hall with a scary, ghostly birthday party, a creepy attic with, you know, a very scary Constance Hatchaway, the killer bride, which that's my favorite part. Then you descend to the graveyard, as I said, and on your way out through the Hall of Mirrors. I'm not going to tell you what happens in all these because there's no point, because it's just a sensory experience that just doesn't deserve to be described. But anyway, few updates to this since the ride opened. The Haunted Mansion Holiday Overlay was introduced in October 2001. That's only in Disneyland, and that is with the characters from The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Meh.
Then, like in 2004, they added the effect of Madame Leota's ball actually floating in the middle of the room rather than sitting on the table. In 2006, the Constance Hatchaway storyline replaced a room where there was a bride with a visible beating heart, which was kind of a leftover from the original idea about Priscilla. And in 2007, in Disney World, the Walt Disney World attraction got some spruced up effects, the endless staircase scene.
Oh, the staircase scene was so cool. It replaced those spiders that were just sort of like
those terrible
dated,
rubber spiders.
But
like, what
now
were
it's
those
like
doing
the stairways,
there ever?
and you just see these like footprints just like up on the ceiling. It's so cool.
I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, well, freaking done.
Was that also when they expanded the queue so that it had the
That was in 2011, so that was a few years later. Yeah, that's when they got the interactive queue. And then in Disneyland in 2015, the Hatbox Ghost was returned. And the Hatbox Ghost was, sorry, a little bit of a spoiler, like you pass him by in the graveyard and his head goes into his little box that he's holding. It's a really cool effect. I mean, it, again, defies description. He was in the attraction when it opened in 1969, but they just could not get the effect to work right. People were coming too close and the effect was getting ruined. So the Hatbox Ghost was removed, but he somehow got a cult following. And in 2015, they fixed up the effect and he was returned. The only real difference between any of these is the Walt Disney World one is slightly longer, but when they were making all of the items for the Disneyland one, they were already making duplicates for Disney World because they knew it was going to go to Disney World also.
And the styles of the mansions are different.
On opening day. Mm-hmm.
The exteriors.
Yes, the exteriors are different. Yes, because as I said, in Disney World, the mansion is in Liberty Square, so the feel is it doesn't have the antebellum South feeling of the one.
Yeah,
in Disneyland.
I know that one is based on Hudson Valley.
Yes, it is,
and it is more beautiful. Fight me.
Yeah,
it's more beautiful.
I think I agree with you. Yeah, and it's just that Disney World doesn't have to contend like you walk through a really long portrait gallery in Disneyland because you're actually having to pass underneath the Disneyland Railroad to get to the main show building. So it's just
thank you.
Hard times. Yeah.
And this one is brick. The Magic Kingdom one is brick, and brick.
The brick is lit, fam.
The brick is lit, fam.
When I tell y'all like that is the most condensed version of the history I can give you. Goodness gracious, it's so interesting to me.
It's such a good ride.
So good.
It's such a good ride. Okay, so now we're going to transition over to Pirates of the Caribbean, the attraction.
Mm-hmm.
So Pirates of the Caribbean opened on March 18th, 1967 in Disneyland, California. The concept of it was a water-based adventure dark ride through the golden age of piracy. Originally, it was intended to be a walkthrough wax museum. Disney seemed very, very big on walkthroughs. They really wanted people to just like...
What is this?
Yeah, they wanted people exercising, and they didn't want them to get lazy. And then that all changed at the World's Fair, where they had so much success with audio animatronics in the Carousel of Progress, and with the success of It's a Small World with that water boat system. And they were like, okay, we know what we're doing. Pirates of the Caribbean, we're going to make this the largest audio animatronic project at the time. And then they were like, and we're also going to just flood that sucker and put a boat in it, and it's going to be great. So they did.
Oh, great call. Great call.
And it was the right choice. That was the choice. They made it and it was correct. So yeah, most of this I've said before in episode 1, but I'm saying it again because maybe it's on the test at the end, and also our sound quality is much better now. So Pirates of the Caribbean is a ride that can be found in 5 Disney parks: Disneyland California, Disneyland Paris, Tokyo Disneyland, Shanghai Disneyland, and Walt Disney World. Each version of Pirates of the Caribbean is slightly different from one another, with the exception of Shanghai Disneyland, which is Pirates of the Caribbean Battle for the Sunken Treasure, which that is a completely different plot line from the other one. And I've said this before in the last episode, like, go on YouTube and watch that.
I'm
it is
so obsessed with it.
It's incredible what they do. It is not the original Pirates of the Caribbean at all. So if you go there and you're like expecting like, oh, I'm going to see this, you're not going to see it. You're going to see something brand new, and it's pretty freaking awesome. So Pirates of the Caribbean, the lead designer on it was Mark Davis.
There he is.
Other notable Imagineers included Blaine Gibson, who did character designs, Yale Gracie, who did special effects, Yale Gracie from Haunted Mansion, Alice Estes Davis and Leota Toombs Thomas did costumes. Leota Toombs Thomas also worked on Haunted Mansion, hence Madame Leota.
They're so tired.
Xavier X Atencio did the songs. Claude Coates did the sets. And I mean, there were tons of others, but all of those like Disney legend Imagineers worked on this ride. It was the last attraction to be overseen by Walt before his death, which was 3 months before the attraction opened, which sucks.
Bummer.
Because he was really, really, really jazzed about this ride. And it's a shame that he never got to see it completed. Great. So now I'm just gonna move straight ahead. I'm not gonna give you all that gorgeous stuff that she gave you with Haunted Mansion. I'm just gonna go right onto the plot. Here's Connor's infamous plot summary of Pirates of the Caribbean, the ride that you would probably see in the Magic Kingdom or in Disneyland, California. So each version of Pirates of the Caribbean features these elements, locations as part of the ride. So you'll get a haunted pirate's grotto, so Dead Man's Cove, Hurricane Lagoon, and in these places you encounter a lot of skeletons and the ghostly remains of pirates from their adventures on the high seas. Sometimes mermaids have been added if they're not broken. So usually they're broken, but they were there, and when they were there, the effect was like really, really cool. But it worked for like all of 5 seconds, and then they were like, "We're not gonna fix it," and I was like, "I hate you."
That's so tragic.
Yeah. It was really cool because like when you were going by in the boat, there were like splashes next to you, and you could see like some like lights in the water of so like their fins. It was like really, really cool. And it lasted so short a time that I thought I was on crack and like imagining this effect because I would talk about it and no one else was like, I've never seen that. I've never seen that.
Oh my God, I'm with you.
And
I saw it.
I got there like within the like X amount of months that it actually worked. And then it tanked and they just like didn't fix it. And it's just such a bummer. But it was there. It was an actual thing. Yeah, it's a thing. So the next thing that you'll get is you'll get some waterfall drops because we love when a dad who isn't paying attention loses his sunglasses. So you usually get like 1 or 2 of those. In Disneyland, you get 2. In Disney World, you get 1 16-foot drop, which is kind of awesome.
Oh, kill me. It's my least favorite part.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Because
you're
I
in
dread
darkness.
it through the whole beginning.
You're in darkness. I love it.
I hate it.
And then you'll go to a fort. So a pirate ship is laying siege to a Spanish fort in this epic cannonball battle with fun pops of water and light and fog. The ship is usually called the Wicked Wench. Before the films came out, there was a captain there who was like barking orders, and then they were like, we're going to make it Captain Barbossa from the movie. And so the pirates are like winning this fight. So then you move into the town square, and that's Puerto Dorado, which is on the edge of Isla Tesoro. So the pirates, they have gotten into the town now. They're off the boat. They're in the town, and they are getting up to their fun and awful hijinks, which now they've been made, more acceptable in the climate that we're in of like glorifying and fetishizing piracy, which was very much helped by the film franchise. Mm-hmm. So now we're not like selling women or chasing after them to assault them or like waterboarding the mayor. We're mostly just getting drunk and stealing and menacing folks. So yay.
Menacing, there it is.
Menacing. And then the Wicked Witch comes out and she menaces you. And then the alien pops out and he menaces you. So then after you've gone through the town and you've gone like under the bridge where there's the dude with this like dirty ass foot hanging off. And then people reach up and they touch it. And then cast members are like, don't touch catch it. And yeah, then you pass by my favorite guy who's drunk with all
Sleeping
the
with the
pigs,
pigs.
because pigs are my favorite
Yes.
animal. Then you move into the next phase of the ride, which is the burning city. So this is when the town just, gets set on fire, because that's what pirates do. And the women used to be chased by the pirates. And then people were like, this kind of looks like the pirates are going to assault them. And so then they turned them around and reversed it. So now it's the women chasing the pirates, which I'm like, that's a good one. Love that.
Good job. What an easy fix, too.
Easy fix. Fun fact about this one. Don't cut this out.
I promise I won't.
Fun fact about this one. They purposefully made the fire look unreal so that you can sort of see the sheets and stuff like that and the lights that sort of like flicker on it, because they brought Yale Gracie in and he did his job so well with the special effects that they thought people would be concerned that it was an actual fire and panic.
Oh, wow.
So all of the fire looking fake is very intentional. They had the capacity of making it look much more real, and they chose not to for fear of crowd panic.
Wow.
So then after you burn down everything, then you go into the dungeon. So we land in the jail cell, and this is where the pirates have that iconic scene where they are whistling at the dog who's holding the keys and trying to coax him with a bone so that they can escape. The story is that like you are kind of with the point of view of the pirates, and you escape in some sort of explosive way with gunpowder from the town's arsenal. This is where it kind of becomes like less memorable for me, because I'm still focused on the dog.
Mm-hmm.
And then you escape, and then there's some like fun treasure room sequences.
Yeah.
And then that's usually the end of the ride. So since the film, they've added the elements from the Pirates of the Caribbean film franchise, including Jack Sparrow has been added throughout. They've sort of altered the plot so that it follows the same plot, but it's Captain Barbossa and the pirates hunting Jack Sparrow, which kind of gives you a little bit clearer of a through line through it all, which they made this change. People freaked out because people are afraid of change. I don't particularly mind this addition because I don't think it takes away from. I don't think it takes away from the original plot. I think it also just it gives you something else to look at. Mm-hmm. They also added Captain Barbossa, like I said. They added the like mermaid little stuff. They had a Davy Jones projection on the fog waterfall. They had a Blackbeard projection on the fog waterfall. So they've just, added little sprinkles of the film franchise where they could. Added elements of looking for Jack. Spoiler alert, he's in the barrel behind you, dumbass. Pirates of the Caribbean, easily one of the most beloved attractions in Disney Parks history. Originally, they weren't going to bring it to the Magic Kingdom. They weren't expecting. They thought like, oh, it's in Florida. It's kind of close to where the pirates actually were. People probably wouldn't be interested in this. And people got to the Magic Kingdom and they were like, where the fuck is Pirates? And they were like, oh shit. And so they built it. At that point, they had already built the railroad. So that is why you have the 16-foot drop. The 16-foot drop actually plunges you below the railroad so that you can continue the ride. So yeah. All right. Do you want to go back to Haunted Mansion for Haunted Mansion the movie?
Yeah, let's. I don't. This won't be super duper long. Because about this one, there's not much to say, but we'll get to that.
No.
Yep. So, the Haunted Mansion film was released on November 26, 2003, directed by Rob Minkoff and written by David Berenbaum. He was hired to expand and incorporate the ride story and source material into a movie. Now, before this 2003 film, there had been a couple of other attempts at making a Haunted Mansion movie. In the early 90s, plans for a movie were pitched to Walt Disney Pictures head Jeffrey Katzenberg because he was like, I really want to make attractions into movies. So that idea has been around since the 90s. And that idea was dropped because of the failure at the time of Hocus Pocus. So they thought there wouldn't be an interest in more like supernatural, Halloween-y type films. Then in 1997, they gave it another try. And they were going to make it a TV movie and put it on Wonderful World of Disney. But then they didn't think that the Tower of Terror TV movie got good enough ratings. So then they scrapped it again. And then finally, in around the 2000s, Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, and the Country Bear Jamboree were chosen as attraction to film adaptations.
Which, thank God we are not talking about Country Bear Jamboree, because that would just be an all-around shit fest.
That'll be a bonus episode one day, and we'll be really drunk.
Yeah, that's the only way to watch that movie.
Oh my God. But Haunted Mansion was actually 5th in the series of films based on attractions right after Pirates of the Caribbean. The budget of the movie was $90 million, and it ended up making $182.3 million at the box office. The mansion scenes were filmed in Santa Clarita, California, and the rest in New Orleans. And the mansion in this one is kind of a mix-up of the Disneyland and Walt Disney World buildings. Most notably, the Glass Conservatory is a big nod to the Walt Disney World mansion. The movie didn't do very well at all. Disney wasn't happy because it only made a quarter of what Pirates of the Caribbean did. And it has a good old 13% on Rotten Tomatoes. The cast features Eddie Murphy as Jim Evers, Terrence Stamp as Ramsley, the, spoiler, evil butler, Nathaniel Parker as Edward
Is that
Gracie.
a spoiler, though? Because you could see it from, like, oh, God.
Control yourself.
You could see that from across the damn country.
Connor's so mad about it. Marsha Thomason played Sarah, Jim's wife. Jennifer Tilly was Madame Leota. Wallace Shawn is in there as Ezra. Dina Spivey is Emma. Mark John Jeffries is Michael, who is the son of Jim and Sarah. And Ari Davis was Megan, their daughter. So a quick plot summary of the Haunted Mansion. So our main character is Jim Evers. He and his wife are both real estate agents, and Jim is not focused enough on his family. And they finally plan their big family trip to the lake. But on the way, Jim just cannot resist going to check out the Gracie Manor because his wife Sarah was contacted by the owner about selling it. They arrive at the Gracie Manor and things are a little bit strange. And they meet the English butler Ramsley, a couple of other servants, and they meet its owner Edward Gracie. And there's a storm and they are forced to stay at the mansion for the night. And that's when things take a really strange turn, mostly focused on the fact that Mr. Gracie gives Sarah a tour of the mansion. And he starts discussing the past and the story of his grandfather's death by suicide after he found out that his lover, Elizabeth, had killed herself. And this is a little bit of a spoiler, but what ends up happening is Mr. Gracie, he's not alive anymore. Everybody who's in that mansion is a ghost. And he believes that Sarah, Jim's wife, is the reincarnation of Elizabeth. And he believes that none of the spirits in the mansion can be freed until his and Elizabeth's spirits are finally united. And chaos and ghostly capers ensue.
Lord. I feel like that was such a kind synopsis.
It had so much potential.
It truly did.
So, to be completely honest with you, I don't have a lot of fun things to say about this because it's really, it's been hidden in time because everybody hated it. Maybe if you want a little fun fact.
Fun fact, Caroline had the audacity to include this in a movie marathon for Disney Plus.
I don't regret it.
Previous episodes.
I don't regret it, and I will tell you why later. But anyway, I'll give you one cute little fun fact about the design. The farther that the ghosts get away from the mansion, the more dead they look. So, you know, if you think about Ezra and Emma, the two servants, they don't really look ghostly when they're in the mansion. Then they bust out and they're starting to look all like clearish, bluish, and ghostly. And then the zombies that we meet later on, which, what a woof. The zombies are the most dead because they are the farthest away from the mansion. And to be completely honest with you, that's really all I have to say about that.
Cool. So I'm going to talk about Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, although it should be noted that Pirates of the Caribbean has now been turned into a 5+ movie franchise. So Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl was released on July 9th, 2003. It had an early release at Disneyland in June. So Pirates of the Caribbean was produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, who also produced Armageddon, Top Gun, Pearl Harbor, National Treasure, big like action blockbuster producer. It was directed by Gore Verbinski, who at the time he had directed Mouse Hunt, that movie with Nathan Lane.
Mm-hmm.
But his big one was he did The Ring.
Right.
So like he's a good deal. The screenplay was by Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio. And then the screen story was written by Ted Elliott, Terry Rossio, Stuart Beattie, and Jay Wolpert. So these folks, they've worked, for reference, they have worked on the stories of Shrek, Aladdin, The Road to El Dorado, The Mask of Zorro, so many other things. So it was just like, I know, right? You can see like all of this in the story. And I'm like, I really appreciate that you just, got a lot of minds together to create this like really, really, really rich story in a way that Haunted Mansion didn't. The music is by Klaus Badelt. Klaus Badelt collaborated and learned under Hans Zimmer and had worked on Prince of Egypt with Hans Zimmer.
You can hear it.
And then he has mentored other composers, including Ramin Djawadi, who did the score for Game of Thrones and Westworld.
Oh, wow.
So like, and when you think about all of them together, they just like all go together.
They are everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So this movie starred Johnny Depp as Captain Jack Sparrow, Orlando Bloom as Will Turner, Keira Knightley as Elizabeth Swann, Jeffrey Rush as Captain Barbossa. We did not deserve Jeffrey Rush as a pirate, but I'm so glad that it was given to us. Jack Davenport as Commodore Norrington, Jonathan Pryce as Governor Swan, Kevin McNally as Gibbs, Zoe Saldana as Anna Maria, and then we had Lee Ehrenberg as Pintel, one of the like silly pirates, and Mackenzie Crook as Ragetti, the other silly pirate. My plot synopsis for this movie. So, when young Elizabeth Swann, the daughter of a British governor sent to live in Port Royal in the Caribbean, when she helps rescue a boy named Will Turner from a shipwreck, she discovers a mysterious pirate medallion and hides it, fearing for the boy's life. Flash forward, and they are all grown up and having feelings with a capital F for one another. But Elizabeth is pursued and proposed to by the newly decorated Commodore Norrington, a guy who was an adult when she was an actual child.
Notice that one. That's good.
On the same day that Norrington proposes, the charming and witty pirate Captain Jack Sparrow arrives in Port Royal to commandeer a ship for himself. So, when Elizabeth Scarlet Takes a Tumble style falls off a cliff, Jack Sparrow rescues her and discovers the golden pirate medallion that she is still carrying to that day. Now, unbeknownst to everyone, this cursed medallion has mysteriously called to the notorious Captain Barbossa and his crew aboard the pirate ship, the Black Pearl. So they arrive and they laid siege to Port Royal, capturing Elizabeth Swann and the medallion, which holds the secret to a curse that has plagued the crew of this pirate ship for years. So when the Proud Boy fleet, led by Norrington, refused to make a deal with Sparrow to learn where Elizabeth may have gone, Loverboy Will Turner teams up with Sparrow, and they set sail on literally one of the best adventure movies of our generation to find Elizabeth, solve the mysteries of a forgotten past, and battle a crap ton of pirates.
Yeah!
And that's my plot synopsis.
I loved that! Feelings with a capital F.
All right.
Let's let it all hang out.
Now that we have all of the research and the background and we fully understand this stuff, let's get into what is working and what is not. So let's start with crafting a story from the source material. So I would say for pirates, what I think works the best for it and is working in its favor is that it's not trying to make sense of the entire ride or be the ride. It takes moments from them and uses them as like a jumping off point to spin a new story. Like, they've taken elements of it, like a siege on a fort. They're like, okay, we can work with that. Skeletal pirates, okay, we can work with that. A jail scene, like we can work with that. And they've created a story with such few elements from it that it feels authentic and new, but also feels like it lives in the same world as the attraction. And I feel like that's the way to go when you're creating a ride based off the attraction, because an attraction tells a story as it goes, and we want to see something new from it. Like, we don't want to just see what we can already experience or what we already know. We want to see that deepening that we always talk about.
Yes, the deepening.
And I feel like
which is
Haunted
why
Mansion doesn't
I
really
felt
do
like,
that.
I get that, but to me that's the most disappointing part about it, is that they had the right idea, which is not trying to replicate the ride. I like the idea of being like, let's make this about the backstory of why the Haunted Mansion is a haunted mansion. I think that's a really good idea. And then, yeah, the carry through is just, it's just not there. It's not there.
Yeah, I think it's really just taking the themes of the ride and using them as a starting point and not the finish line.
Yeah.
There are iconic scenes from the ride that they have incorporated into Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. Like, you've got the jail scene and stuff like that. But it feels like they're just kind of like sprinkled in as extra. So like when that moment happens, it's like, here's a nod to it, and then we're moving on, as opposed to trying to blow that moment up into plot.
And what I loved about the jail scene specifically is that you can give us a moment that's in the ride that we love and recognize, but what we don't realize is going on, that we can now fill in the next time we go on the ride, is that actually Jack Sparrow is also in that jail cell, but he's just not trying to grab the dog, and he's just in there going, that's never going to work. It's just like, it's that fun, like, backstory, like, Wicked feeling of, like, this is what was actually going on in that moment. I love that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Pirates, like, the Pirates plot, the story itself, it's actually quite complex as I was rewatching.
To be honest with you, I looked down to take some notes and like look at something quick, and I was like, I'm gonna have to rewind because I think I missed that plot point.
It is just like chock full of stuff. Nothing really feels superfluous, but I also feel like it's very accessible and easy to follow. I think one of the things that I really like is how they blur the lines of the good guy, bad guy, and what the motivations are, in the same way that guests have sort of grown to blur those lines of the pirates that they're seeing in the attraction. You've got all of these good guys, bad guys, and you're just sort of like flipping them constantly. And I just think that's so cool.
And they use history to their advantage in doing that too.
Yeah.
Like, for the historical reasons why the British soldiers want to be hunting pirates. And I think Haunted Mansion had the ability to use history to make the story richer, and I think they just missed it, because while history makes Pirates a more textured story and a more textured world, they didn't get specific enough in Haunted Mansion with time. Like the opening, when you get the backstory of everything with Mr. Gracie, the party that he's at in the past looks sort of like, the style is like Baroque sort of, and I just thought that was completely wrong. Unless you were going to kind of really go in another direction with the interior of the mansion and make it that style and make it different from the parks, which I could get on board with, but there was just no specificity of place.
Yeah, that was my biggest complaint. I just kept being like, where are we? We see the license plate that they're in Louisiana, but there is nothing that we can grab onto anywhere else that gives us any sort of place.
For a creepy story is NOLA. I mean, let's go. That could be so much fun, and you didn't feel it at all.
Yeah, like we don't have any dialects coming in. We don't have any like notable architecture. We don't have any sort of local history involved.
Exactly.
And then to your point about the party scene, the fact that is just like smashed in there with those main titles, I was like, it undermines that story, because it feels like we're giving equal weight to these CGI main titles as we are to the actual backstory of the events that lead up to that are the prologue.
Yeah.
And so I just don't know where to give weight.
Yeah.
Which I love how Pirates of the Caribbean, they just open, they're like, Pirates of the Caribbean, you're going to get all the names at the end, because we're getting right into the story, and we're opening with this prologue of young Elizabeth Swann and young Will Turner.
And I was thinking,
and it's because we know where to look.
Yeah, the way that they set it up, the opening in the movie, I'm like, families were going to see this movie. this is when everybody's kind of still settling in and passing each other the popcorn. And then they just missed the whole backstory, which, like I already said, I'm going to keep harping on this. I love the idea of going into the backstory of the Haunted Mansion, and then you miss it. You miss it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's what everyone wanted out of this,
That's
out
what
of
I
this
wanted.
movie.
Yes.
And it just, and they just like didn't fully go there. My biggest complaint, I think, for it is that the story of this ride demands so much more gravitas than the story that we got from the movie and the tone and like everything. It really just comes from, I didn't feel like they took it as seriously as we wanted them to take it in the way that Pirates took it. They were like, we're going to do this. The mystery element of it doesn't feel like a mystery. There's no twists and turns. There's no, unexpected reveals, nothing like that.
And I was sad because the ending, sorry, I always say this, a little bit of spoiler. The ending when, he's finally reunited with Elizabeth's spirit and they can go to heaven, I'm kind of like, that's what I'm saying, like the bare bones of this idea, I'm down with that. I kind of like that. I like that at the end of the Haunted Mansion movie, we're going to have souls be reunited. I was kind of moved. I'm not even going to lie. I mean, they didn't earn it at all. I think I'm just a sap. But I was like, had so much potential. A tragic love story. Give it to me. Give it to me.
Yeah. The script itself, it just feels like very heavy-handed. Like, I couldn't decide whether I liked the number of things overtly from the ride. It felt like they were trying to string a shitty story together to make sense of the plot of the ride.
Yes.
Which is a tour. So
that's what I'm saying, is that the ride doesn't have a plot. That's why, like, when I described it in the ride, you can't really describe it because it's kind of just, it's a tour of your house.
You're going on a tour of the mansion because you're a prospective next happy haunt for the mansion.
And that's why, like, your inspiration for this movie, you can kind of go anywhere you want with the plot because of that. So really what you're taking from the ride, this is kind of going into another category, is the look and feel of the mansion. And you got to knock that out of the park. And I just hate the way the mansion looks. It is boring.
Yeah, there were like some elements where I'm like, I like the wallpaper. I like that they added some of the portraits and stuff like that, but it just felt so much like a gimmick. Like it's just sort of like, look, we're doing the ride. Look, we're doing the ride. And I'm like,
and then when they weren't,
no, just do the story, not the ride.
They weren't doing the specific images from the ride, like seeing the singing heads in the graveyard is great, but like when they weren't doing that, they were kind of just phoning in generic haunted house, which is so not Disney. It was so unspecific. Yeah.
I think another one of my biggest frustrations with the script of this is that there is so much lore and so much story that is already attached to the Haunted Mansion in other forms through books, through comics, and like many other things, that they had places that they could look in order to get things, and it just felt like they weren't used. And I think it really comes down to, they had one person write the script and the story.
Exactly.
They needed more people on that. Like, and I forget his name who wrote the script, but like his other notable films are like Elf.
Yeah, David Berenbaum,
and like specializes in like comedy and like family stuff. And it just felt like, while the Haunted Mansion, kind of grapples with silly and spooky, it felt like the place that we wanted to go wasn't comedy.
Again, the ride of the Haunted Mansion is perfect because it really does strike the perfect balance between silly and scary. I do think if they had spent more time in it, they could have found it, but I don't think, even with keeping in the silliness, I don't think it could have been a family film the way that they wanted this to be.
No.
And in that case, they should have just leaned into a different kind of movie altogether, of it being all about these silly ghosts, and put it out at Halloween and have it be a fun kids Halloween movie. And it just wasn't that.
Yeah, I see that. So kind of, this is also sort of like kind of leading into the next thing of character. So I don't know if many people know this, but they released a video game of the Haunted Mansion around the same time. I played the video game. The mechanics of the video game were shit, and I don't particularly recommend it. But what I do recommend is the story. They looked at the film and they were like, no, this is not good. And they rewrote their own story. The story of the video game is that there are the happy haunts who live in the Haunted Mansion, and their leader sort of Madame Leota.
Mm-hmm.
There are evil spirits that have come from the other side and who are trying to take over the haunted mansion and are eliminating the happy haunts who are there. Meanwhile, a writer comes to the haunted mansion to do some like writing and reflecting and things like that. And Leota and the happy haunts contact this writer because they need his help to save the happy haunts and the mansion itself from these evil spirits that threaten it. And so then you control this writer who has this lantern. He becomes the caretaker at the end that you see in the ride. And he is working with the happy haunts to fight off the evil spirits and stay evil from reaching the world of the haunted mansion. And I'm like, we could literally just do that and we would be fine. Because, and this goes to character. The haunted mansion has so many iconic characters that are not like characters in Pirates of the Caribbean where it's like, oh, it's the guy with the pigs. Oh, is that? These are characters that have actual names and titles and roles. And it feels like we just bypassed so many of them.
We didn't really do the 999 happy haunts idea at all.
Nope.
We kind of sped past a lot of them in the graveyard, but that's not the same. Like, it doesn't feel like there were really any happy haunts in the mansion at all.
Yeah. I mean, like, we saw like the hitchhiking ghosts for a moment. We saw the busts for a moment. We got Leota, who we recognize.
But you know what? I have to say, I absolutely hated what they did to her. One of her lines was, "Look, I don't make the rules, okay? I just work here." I hated that for her.
Oh my gosh. My complaints of Madame Leota are...
They ruined her. She's the coolest. They ruined her.
There was just no mystery about her, about her voice, about the way in which she interacts. She's very like another plane of existence type of person. Like even, I would imagine, in life. And she felt
thrown in. Like she ends up like leading them around and giving them the keys to solve the mystery, but she still feels just like she was thrown in as a side thought.
Yeah.
And if you want to make her funny and sassy, I'm here for it, but not in such a contemporary way.
And like, I don't even know if I really want to make Madame Leota very funny and sassy. You've got two other supporting characters that could easily fill that role who are
but I
kind
don't
of
like
already...
them either.
I didn't like them either as well.
Too bad, because I really love Wallace
ghosts
Shawn, and I was like, damn it.
I know, we have so many ghosts, and we see like Leota, the two servants, Gracie, and Terrence Stamp. Like
Ramsley.
Like that. We've got 5. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like this is the haunted mansion. We've got a whole bunch of ghosts that are just background.
Yep.
Like we have so many people to choose from. Like there are no ghost protagonists. The supporting characters don't have any type of development in themselves. Like we don't see Ezra or whatever her name is, the maid character.
Emma.
Like we don't see them. We don't see what their wants and needs are. We don't see them evolved. They're just, they and Madame Leota are just tools to get to the next scene picture.
I know that Ezra and Emma are supposed to add a comedic touch, but they like didn't go hard enough on that either. So I'm like, are you supposed to be adding...
But also, did we need a comedic touch if Eddie Murphy is your main character?
I completely agree with you. I know, you know what? It makes me sad because I really like Eddie Murphy in this, but I just don't want him doing the haunted... I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I know I keep harping on this, but like, we didn't get any of the ghosts that we love from the ride as playable characters, except for
and part of
Leota.
me is also wondering if obviously this wasn't, they were going for a family film, so this was just going to be what it was. But I'm like, I think we just needed all adult characters, unless there was like a kid ghost.
Yeah,
I think having kids as 2 of the main characters just confused it further. I don't think having it be a family story was the call. It should have been, like you were saying in the video game, like the lone writer. Or maybe him and his wife, but that's it, you know?
Yeah, I'm like, I feel like I feel like the story of the Haunted Mansion is just so much first and foremost about the ghosts. And not about humans. And I feel like if humans are added to the story, that they should be there to help the ghosts. And
it should fill in something that the ride doesn't have, which I feel like is exactly what happens in Pirates. Because obviously Pirates, the ride, doesn't have a love story. But then we get one with Will and Elizabeth. And we wanted that. Like, it adds another beautiful layer.
And I think what Pirates of the Caribbean does so well is that, like, we have so many rich characters and all of them get growth and development, including the supporting and minor characters. Like
Yes.
Norrington, Governor Swan, Barbossa, they all have growth and development. And then in terms of the characters themselves and drawing them from the source material, we don't really have many named characters in the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction in the way that we do for Haunted Mansion. So what they've done is they've kind of picked out some iconic figures and assigned roles to them in the film. So like we have Gibbs, who is assigned the role of the man sleeping drunk with the pigs. Barbossa comes from the captain who is aboard the Wicked Wench. And then they were like, okay, we can do something with this captain. Who is he? They get Barbossa. So like they've taken these places and they've created new characters in which they can fit both a role in the film and they can fit a role in the ride. And I'm like, that's how you do it. And
it just says it all that the movie did such a good job that they then added characters to the ride from the movie. I mean, that's how you know. That's how you know. Meanwhile, if you tried to put anybody from the movie into the Haunted Mansion ride, it wouldn't fit.
People would revolt. It would not fit, and people would revolt. I would lead that revolution. I was going to say
the only thing I would accept would maybe be Ramsley, but you would absolutely hate that.
I don't need Terrence Stamp.
A scary butler.
Talking like this. I'm not the bad guy.
But was he screwed from the beginning? Like, are you always going to assume that the butler is going to be evil in a Haunted Mansion anyway?
Not necessarily, but like, holy shit, did he just like, he just took a big ass Sharpie and just like outlined that and he was like, here we go. So yeah, clearly Pirates of the Caribbean, the way that they're handling the characters from the source material is
just the
like
fact that one of the most iconic characters in film now came from it. I mean, incredible.
Yeah. So then I would say moving on to the tone of the movie, and we sort of like talked about this a little bit. I feel like what Haunted Mansion is trying to do, and it's ironic given what you said earlier about their attempts to try and adapt this ride into a film, it feels like in this film that they're trying to do something like Hocus Pocus.
Yes.
Where you've got sort of like the silly and spooky element, but they're just not doing it very well. And I feel like I identified why. The enemies, the bad guys, one, they keep the fact that they're the bad guy as like the reveal until the end, even though you can see it from a mile away. In Hocus Pocus, they don't. You know that they're the bad guys from the beginning.
Yeah, okay.
And so what they then do is they develop those bad guys so that you like the bad guys almost as much as you like the good guys, that they're just as charming, that they make just as many silly mistakes. And so that way you can do more spooky things and you can lighten it up. And they do this in Pirates because you have Pintel and Ragetti as those two like bumbling pirates that are comedic relief where we know that they're the bad guys of the movie, but we spend so much time with them and we see them in roles of being terrifying when they're stalking Elizabeth Swann in her house. But then we also see them, you know, like in their dresses goofing off and like that kind of stuff. So like it helps cut the spooky level without sacrificing how scary things might actually be.
Yeah, I was wondering if, I don't remember what I thought at the time. I was just thrilled by it when I saw it as a kid, so I don't really know. But I wonder if anybody saw it at the time and felt that it was too dark. I wonder if anybody felt, because that gets scary, it gets violent, like it goes there.
It does.
And so I wonder, I'm like, did Haunted Mansion, I really want to know, like, did Haunted Mansion need to choose? Like, is striking balance between scary and silly impossible in a movie?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I truly don't think so, because I think Hocus Pocus does that so well.
Yeah.
Same thing with Pirates, where like there are moments that are like really, really frightening, but then there are some moments that are just like so funny.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like the tone hits right with the ride, because the ride also has like really, really spooky moments.
Yeah.
And then like really, really funny ones. And I think what tonally Pirates of the Caribbean is doing so well is that they're playing it as a historical drama mixed with an adventure film. The PG-13 rating is correct. the comedy and the drama, they balanced it because it's shared on both sides of the coin of the good guys and the bad guys. And the comedy comes in the moments that we least expect it, in the moments that we as an audience have committed to taking it really seriously.
Mhm.
And then boom, they hit us with a comedic moment and
And
it
the
takes us off our
comedy-
guard. Like when Elizabeth is like running through the house away from the pirates and then she grabs the sword and then she drops it to the ground and she can't get it out of the stupid thing.
Great, yeah.
And all the sound cuts out and it's just like a funny moment. So like right when it gets too frightening, they just sort of cut it a little bit. And remind you, like, there's some funny stuff in here too.
And it comes
that's
from
what you do.
Character. And I think that Haunted Mansion relies on the comedy being too much one-liners because you know what? I don't blame them for trying that because you've got Eddie Murphy who's brilliant at that. But number one, the one-liners weren't really funny enough. And they had, like we were saying before, you have so many ghosts to choose from that you could have really leaned on the comedy by having it be coming from specific characters, and that's why it's funny.
Right.
You don't even have to layer in jokes.
Exactly.
There is a world, a very specific world. If you tell me Eddie Murphy starring in the Haunted Mansion, I see that being like this chaotic, like ghosts are swirling all around and things are crazy and flipping around. And they didn't put him in the right world for him to shine with the type of comedy that he does.
No.
Like, you just give me Eddie Murphy, like, having jokes, but, like, give me Eddie Murphy playing off of these silly ghosts. I think that'd be really funny.
Yeah, I feel like that's funny, but it's also, like, not the Haunted Mansion that anybody would
No,
actually
definitely not.
want.
But if we were going to go that way, then we should have just gone. Which is, like, when we talked about this a bit, when I recommended this in the movie marathon, which I still do because I think for me, it was super interesting to go back and, like, see it through different eyes when I was a child and like totally thrilled by it, which was kind of like the theme of my marathon. But anyway, I touched on this briefly, but there had been plans for Guillermo del Toro to remake the movie.
Right.
And when he talked about it, he promised that, you know, now at one point they were talking about Ryan Gosling was going to star in it. And he promised that it was going to be the perfect balance between, he's like, it's going to be scary, but it's going to be silly. I definitely trust him to do what Pirates does, which is lean a little bit more on like the serious, scary sincerity of it. But he said exactly what I wanted to hear, which is that like it was going to focus specifically on a ghost. And he said he wanted the main spook to be the Hatbox Ghost. Like he was going to be the main character. And they were going to shoot it in 3D. And that just already sounds more correct to me. Like the Haunted Mansion movie should be in 3D, like, and have that kind of feel.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't say this in my background, but also the budget difference between these two movies was astounding. What did you say the budget was for?
It was $90 million.
Okay. Pirates of the Caribbean's budget was $140 million.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was clear that they kind of knew which one that they wanted to invest in. And I feel like that's probably because Pirates had a clearer idea of what it was going to be, because they've had people who have been really like working on it.
And if you talked about it on paper and you asked me which one would you think would need more money, I would say the Haunted Mansion, because I'm like, you're going to have to make the ghosts and all these effects.
Yeah.
So give it to Haunted Mansion.
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah, I am too.
You know.
Yeah, they just took a lot of the easy way out on this. And I mean, I will say my stream of consciousness reaction to watching this, I literally wrote down, is this a reincarnation story? Jesus, it is.
I want it to be, but I want it to be done well. I love a reincarnation storyline. I think that shit is cool. I'm into
reincarnation storylines.
But they didn't explain.
I feel like the Mummy can do it, but
they also just didn't explain, like, why does, like, is she the reincarnation? Like, why do they look exactly the same? Like, if she's reincarnated, does she have any memories of
reincarnation? Has all kinds of rules and stuff like that they were not willing to do the work on. And I'm like, no. Again, it felt easy.
Oh, also, sorry, a quick thing in terms of character, and then I'm done on character. I absolutely hated that zombies were characters in this.
Oh, yeah.
Get those out of here. That is the wrong movie. This is not The Mummy. This is not The Walking Dead. Number one, it was like too gory, where the feel of the Haunted Mansion, which is scary fun, it wasn't there anymore. It was just gory, like skeletons chasing after these children, which I was kind of like, this is upsetting and I don't like it.
Ironically, the frighteningness, the scary of that scene was actually probably the one time that I thought that the movie was kind of interesting.
Oh, wow.
Like,
know. It just felt like such the wrong world. Like, it wasn't that
it was
kind
such
of world.
it was such a departure from the established world that we were in. But
even if we were living in a scary version of this story, I still feel like zombies like that are just not in this haunted mansion.
Truly, yes. I think I was just sort of like, I'm so glad to see some sort of like supernatural element like attacking them, and that there actually is like some fear involved, as opposed to like hokey fear of like, things are moving and I have no control over my chair as it's spinning around this crystal ball. Like, not that kind of fear, but fear that we can identify of like, oh shit, if that was like coming after me, I would crap my pants.
Yes, true.
So moving on to like the overall production, just Pirates of the Caribbean knocks it out of the park. I'm just going to go right down the line of like the things that I just really want to like take a moment and note. The blacksmith shop sword fight is easily one of the best sword fights that we've had since The Princess Bride. I have a note about that
too. Yep, me too.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. It's like that rhythmic sword fighting that you have where it goes along with the music, and it's just
incredible, incredible music. The music is everything.
That's my next thing. But the score is just it is now iconic.
Yes.
Like, iconic.
Incredible. And the fact that that's what plays outside of the attraction now, it's again proof. That's how you know the movie's good, when they feed off of each other in a continuous loop.
Yeah, exactly.
The fact that we didn't have any good music in Haunted Mansion is a crime, because Grim Grinning Ghost is amazing.
Yep, all like the entire soundtrack of the ride is like, people know it. They know that like, yeah. I also had a nice call out to the CGI.
Looks good.
CGI, it still looks good. And it's because they use it sparingly on people.
Yeah.
So it looks better in the moments that they do. Like, they only use it when they like absolutely have to. And to that end, the reveal of the supernatural element of Pirates of the Caribbean is so good. The curse is so artfully and tastefully introduced in that moment in the jail cell when he plunges his arm forward into the moonlight and it turns into a skeleton. Like, we can all remember that scene because they could have just been like, we're all skeletons, but instead they just do this sort of subtler way, and I'm like, that's always the right choice. It's always the right choice. And
I love that it's like when we talk about deepening, that's something that doesn't appear in the ride. That's a deepening of the story for the movie. They're not just pirates, they're cursed zombie pirates. Like, great.
Right. And I feel like that's taking the skeletons that you see in the beginning of the ride and like combining that with the pirates that you see in it. And then with Haunted Mansion, going down my list again, for them, the introduction of the supernatural, I feel like there wasn't any sort of moment.
One. Yeah, no, there wasn't at all. No.
And like, it wasn't, if there was, it wasn't memorable. And I feel like it's also kind of plays into the tone. Like, it feels like the supernatural elements of that movie, they didn't really treat with respect.
Yeah, especially when Ramsley gets dragged down to hell at the end. You're kind of like, what power is making that happen exactly?
Yeah, and also I was like, did he summon hell for it to just kill him instantly?
Like, is he the devil?
I was so confused because I'm like, what would benefit him summoning hell if it just took him immediately?
Especially because he says, he's like, his ending line is like, oh, you love her? Well, damn you all to hell. What does that even mean? You damn him to hell? Why?
It means nothing, because he says damn you to hell, and then it opens up and then it just grabs him.
Which, again, like, if you told me that they made a Haunted Mansion movie and at the end the villain gets dragged off to hell, I'd be like, that sounds lit. But it wasn't.
Yeah, Dr. Facilier gets dragged off to hell, and that's lit.
That was lit. You and I both love Halloween. I love being able to have movies that I watch on Halloween, and this doesn't even qualify for me. And even if it was like a mediocre movie, I'll still watch it because I love a holiday movie. But this I just won't watch at Halloween because it's not like fun Halloween-y. It's not scary Halloween-y.
No.
There's, like I said before, no music.
Nope.
Give me more new music and maybe I'll like it even more. Like something memorable.
Yeah. I thought the sets of the movie were pretty good.
I hated them. I cannot explain. I just hate them. Hate them.
I think I should probably rephrase that. I think the sets were good in that they were interesting to look at. I think the theming of them and what actually they were using was off.
I didn't want to like be there. I wasn't like, oh, I wish I could go to that place. If you showed me pictures of the interior of the ride, I'd be like, I want to go there. That's cool.
I would agree with that. The mansions are so carefully designed for specific time periods. And
it didn't feel like a Louisiana mansion too, which has its own feel entirely.
I don't like that we weren't rooted in just one mansion. I appreciate that they were trying to like give us both. Don't, because the two are very, very different from each other. Although content is the same, design wise, they're very different.
And they were originally gonna place this story for the movie in upstate New York, and then they changed their mind.
Yeah, I'm like, one in upstate New York is very different from Louisiana. The culture of ghosts and ghost stories and Gothic literature and things like that are very, very different. Like, just pick one.
I think another thing that's just proof of what a good job Pirates, the movie, does with production is just that, like, who wouldn't want to dress up as Captain Jack Sparrow for Halloween? It's a specific look. Oh, yeah. It's like a look that you want to be. It's the same thing I always say. It's like, if I don't want to be in there in some way, you didn't do a good job. Because that's what Disney's all about. Like, I want to live in that world.
I agree. And then these are just sort of my other, like, final thoughts. I will say, I did enjoy the kids in the Haunted Mansion.
They did a good job. At least they act like kids. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They're not overly precocious.
I enjoyed their acting. I enjoyed what they added to it. Do I think in the Haunted Mansion story they belong? No. But for them being there, I enjoyed what they were doing. The other thing that I think is a major plus is having an all-black family in the lead.
Yes.
And just like,
love
that's
it.
a thing.
Love it.
I feel like this movie, we're shitting on it in a particular place because we can afford to shit on it. Whereas other people, particularly black people, they can't really shit on this because they're like, if we don't have this, like, what else do we like? What else is there? I mean, there is a fair amount of diversity in Pirates. I understand the historical confines that they have for the characters that they were putting in the leads, and so I did appreciate that when in certain places when they could, that they added some diversity. I still think that like Pintel and Rigetti, they didn't both have to be two white men. Like you could have had people of color there.
What I didn't understand with Haunted Mansion is if you go online and you look up the plot summary, it specifically talks about how Elizabeth, who Gracie was in love with, was a mixed race woman who, one website said that she was a servant in the house. One of them said she was a child of a servant of the house. I'm here for, especially for setting the story in Louisiana, if we're going to acknowledge that stuff, I'm here for it. But I'm like, but I don't recall anybody filling me in on that really in the movie itself.
No,
and that was part of the problem of their relationship, was that it was interracial.
All that has been established is that Ramsley was like, it's improper for him to have married her, and so I did that. But never specifically calls out
just flat out
race
make him a
as being the
racist,
thing.
because that would make him a villain, a really bad one.
Exactly. I'm like, how do we have a black family in this lead in Louisiana in a ghostly
we don't acknowledge
manner?
That the villain is a racist.
Yeah. Like, why aren't we actually like saying the thing? Because that's what the thing is.
Yep.
And then I also just want to take a moment and acknowledge the feminism in Pirates of the Caribbean. Not only do we have Anna Maria, who captains the Interceptor for the majority of the film, but we have a badass woman character in Elizabeth Swann who is a quote-unquote lady in a corset, and her journey is finding herself as a leader without ever having to compromise traditional femininity.
I just pray that if they are indeed working on another Pirates, they better get Red up in there quickly. I need it.
Yeah.
Red's got to be in there.
Yeah.
Because I do agree with you. But in a weird way, because I view things differently than when in 2003, of course. I remember when I saw it as a kid, I was like, she's a badass. I love her. And I still do. And again, this has to do with it being a pirate movie. I guess it's a fine line. But I'm like, oh God, she gets like beat up on and groped and like that kind of stuff a little too many times for me. Like there was this one shot where all of the crew of the Black Pearl like is groping her, and I was like, I hate this. Hate it.
Yeah.
But it's of the time. 2003, we were thinking about that stuff differently. sucks.
That's very true. I just know I've had conversations with people where they love the direction that people have been moving in terms of presenting feminism in movies as commonplace.
Mm-hmm.
The frustration has been that the image of being a feminist has become synonymous with being either like a tomboy or appropriating traditionally male things. We've talked about this in the last episode. I'm acknowledging that. And that in this film, what I really, really enjoy is that she can have all of those feminist qualities of being a leader and being in command and taking charge of her own life. And she doesn't have to appropriate traditionally male things in order to do that. That she can do all of those things while firmly being a woman in traditional feminine respects.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, that is, I think, just as important as seeing tomboys as feminists and gender non-conforming people as feminists. It's important that we see that women, men, gender non-conforming people all have a place in feminism by just being who they are. That they don't have to change anything about themselves in order to be feminist. So, all right. So I feel like that's our analysis.
Yeah, and so we've got the clear winner in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yep.
But in a weird way, I don't discourage you from watching The Haunted Mansion, just so... I can't explain why, to be honest with you. I think it's really just because I love that attraction. I love that world. And it deserves a movie. And of course, this is not the movie we deserved, but it deserves a movie.
Yeah, I have a differing opinion. Haunted Mansion is one.
Skip it.
No, I won't say skip it. I'll say watch it once and then pack it up and let it die.
Cool. Yes, I agree. I would love to hear if kids like it because I loved it when I was a kid. I can't explain why. So I would love to hear if anybody's got a kid who watches it for the first time. Let us know what they think. Maybe kids will like it.
I doubt it. Kids have taste.
Oh, bless.
So as we had said in the last episode, we have officially launched the Poor Unfortunate Fam, which is a Facebook group where we are connecting all of our listeners so that they can discuss the topics that we bring up in the episodes, meet one another so that they know that they're not alone, and share news that they've heard about Disney stuff, things that they're excited about. So you can find us. You can either go to our Facebook page and find us that way, or you can just go to facebook.com/groups/Poor Unfortunate Fam. FAM as in
Mickey.
My oh my, Haunted Mansion sucks. We'd love to have you there. I'm there. Caroline's there. Both of my sisters are there.
Yes.
My younger sister Shannon completely said all of the things that I wish that I had said in our last episode about Brave, and just like was probably exactly the type of comment that Caroline you were looking for.
Yes,
that I was unable to give you as a white male. Also, as we said before, we're working on setting up some sort of way to donate money to Poor Unfortunate Podcast, because it does take a little bit to bring this to you every week. And so we just want to sort of cover some of the costs so that we can keep going. So we'll have more news about that. It'll definitely be posted in the Poor Unfortunate Fam and on other social media and stuff like that. So keep an eye out for that. We know the money is tight for a lot of people. We know that we're in very, very difficult times. If you find yourself feeling so inclined, if you like an episode a lot and you just want to let us know that you're here and you're enjoying it and you want more, if you have like $1 or $2 or whatever you can spare, it would be greatly appreciated when we have that up and running. So, you want to do the socials?
Yes, and as we always say, please follow us on social media. You can find us at Poor Unfortunate Podcast on Facebook and on Instagram. And by the way, there's a post on the Instagram about the Poor Unfortunate Fam too that explains to you how to find it if you forget. And on Twitter, we are at Unfortunate Pod, and you can email us at poorunfortunatepodcast@gmail.com.
We like email.
But you know what? We've gotten a lot of lovely Instagram DMs.
Yeah.
Which we're so appreciative. We've had a few come in the past week that are so kind.
After this last episode, there have been quite a few people who have reached out, and it's actually really meant the world.
Yeah, it
to
really
us
has.
to
Even
know
if
that
you
they're
message us and when you say that you want to fight us, we love that.
Yeah. If you aren't screaming at us as we're talking or agreeing with us or whatever, if there's not some sort of visceral reaction from you, we have done our jobs wrong. All right.
Alrighty.
And that's everything for us. We will see you soon. And yeah, stay safe, wear a mask. Beluga Savruga. Bye-bye.
Bye.